All right. Um, I don't have a mic, so I'm just gonna try to talk kind of loud. Maybe I'll pull this up a little bit easier to hear me. So here I am. I'm back with a vlog. I've got some soup here from my new favorite local soup spot. Honestly, I can't remember the name, but I've got two soups. One of them is a lentil soup, and the other one's more like a clam chowder. So I am determined this year to lose my baby fat. The 20 pounds has got to go. Like, I can't take it anymore. So most meals will be like this. Okay. That is so good. So I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the things I've learned in the last few weeks, just with the new job, all the things that are going on. I've specifically been working on poverty-related problems. I guess this is very similar to the work I was doing before, but there's not really one. Like, before I was working on workforce development specifically, but interestingly enough, there's this call that I was on. It's called like the Bronx Connectivity Call. It happens at 6 a.m. If you are interested at all in helping the Bronx solve poverty or like digital connectedness, so helping those students learn in a remote setting, reach out to me, and I can connect you with those great folks. They're doing really good work. And they need a lot of help. But there's some other sort of, I guess, problem areas that have come up that I think are really interesting that I just wanted to point out. I wanted to like give a very particular like spotlight to these problems, because I've seen them as such, and I don't really hear that many other people talking about them. So if you followed me in like, I think it was like January of 2020, I was doing a lot of like biohacking. So I was working with like the Stanford Med Center to I was doing a couple hackathons with, I can't even remember the name of the group, but you know, we were working on people who had very like rare genetic diseases and trying to use like big data and machine learning and genetics and biotechnology to find like cures for their illnesses. Now, some of that had to do with getting these individuals into clinical trials. So the cool thing about clinical trials is they have drugs in those clinical trials that might target certain cells or pathways that could potentially like lead someone from like a really detrimental form of cancer. This could be bone, skin, cell, blood, that type of cancer, to like actually a cure. So just like understanding that problem more in depth has been really cool. And that's another thing that has actually come up in the last few weeks. So a lot of the times, if you get diagnosed with a certain form of cancer, the first form of treatment that might be recommended to you could be chemotherapy, right? But the interesting thing about like chemotherapy is it virtually kills everything. I'm really trying to get like a good view of the background because this is just like also my fancy ass dress because like y'all know I rent the run right now. All right, anyway, so yeah, so the first form of treatment that doctors and teams, really it's like teams of doctors might recommend to your oncologist, and this is really prevalent in the Black community. A lot of Black women get diagnosed with like breast cancer, That's kind of common. And chemotherapy, it kills virtually everything, all of your cells, your healthy cells and the cancer cells, but that puts you in a state where you are immunocompromised for a pretty significant period of time, until your immune system is able to catch up. That's really hard. That could take quite a long time. And when everyone is talking about precision medicine, they're thinking like beyond chemotherapy that just kills everything, and they're thinking about really targeted solutions. So this means like you have stage 4 lung cancer, but you want something that's going to go in and kill those cancerous cells in your lungs, but that's going to leave everything else virtually like untouched, so that you can go about your day and still like live your life and not be super, because when you're immunocompromised like that from the chemotherapy, it's not the cancer that kills you. It's usually like pneumonia or really a flu. Like you can get the common flu and it'll just take you out. So with the particular case that I worked on with Layla, that's what we saw. Like it wasn't the chemotherapy that actually killed her. It was her organs started to fail. Like she was at such an immunocompromised state, and she was on so many drugs that like her body couldn't rejuvenate. It was like the toxicity from all of the drugs and she'd like maxed out the number of like chemotherapy treatments that she could actually get. So even though the cancer was growing back, it was actually the organ failure that killed her. So I think that's just kind of interesting to understand, and particularly hearing one woman's experience of really figuring out how to exit the chemotherapy circle and enter this space of like clinical trials and diagnostics like herself, even after her team told her like chemotherapy is actually the best option, but she said, no, I want something else. I'm gonna look into these chemical trials. And she started going to conferences and sharing her story, getting invited to panels, listening to other survivors. It's just a really interesting problem. And I feel like a lot of poor communities who are actually impacted most by cancer really don't have access even to the information around what clinical trials are, and how to get involved in them, even though the websites are free and open, and if you do have, some rare form of cancer, you too can enter a clinical trial. What else? So this is actually something I ended up bringing to my team that I think might be interesting just for other people to understand. So a while ago when I was living in Oakland, my neighbors had this I don't know what we could call it, like a Sunday donation block that they would create, where they would cook a ton of food. Like we would all get together and cook food, like our whole block and like their family, and we would set up these tables near the tent cities and start feeding people like twice a month on Sundays. So I did that 8 or 9 times, and I realized most of the people that we're feeding are members of the trans community, and they are homeless. So they're living in tents, and some of them are sex workers. So in the trans community, many trans people kind of get pushed out of the economy in general, and so their only form of work is to like enter sex work, because all of the other forms of work are like off the table. I think it's like a problem that's like kind of invisible unless you are a real ally to the trans community and you have trans friends. Working with more trans people and really setting up that table 8 times, it shined a different light. Like I would see these people come out of their, their tent encampments, and some of them would like come out half dressed a little bit because they were just trying to figure out what the tables were, and then they would like go back in and come back out again. And I did this like over a period of like 4 months, right? So I would go, sometimes I'd take a week off and come back. So, and we went to multiple tent encampments. So I saw this like over and over and over again. And, I just by pattern matching, it was like, wow, most of the members that we're feeding are like actually members of the trans community. Like, this isn't even a coincidence. This is like a phenomenon. The trans community in the Bay Area is being pushed into tent encampments because they're that shut out of the society. And so I know in Berkeley, what I keep hearing is that most of the people who live in the tent encampments are actually drug addicted people. And depending on the substance that those people are abusing, that dictates the location of the tent where they're inhabiting around. So like all the people who use meth live on one street under this bridge, and then all the people who use crack live on this one. And like, from my understanding, from speaking with people who work in like, drug rehabilitation centers and what they've seen around the community, that is something that's come up. So I'll just put that out there. Something else that's really interesting. Oh, okay. This is fascinating, and I did not know this. So there's a lot of talk, since COVID's happened and so many people have lost their jobs, that people are food insecure. So like a lot of people are starving. This isn't a new problem though. This was an issue before COVID, and we have this idea of a soup kitchen, right? So soup kitchens are just open to anyone, and if you are hungry, you go to the soup kitchen and you get a free meal. Some of them are open 24/7 in all the big cities and across the country. That's a thing. That's an American thing. It's very old. A lot of it started in churches. So some of the churches like provide, they donate food. A lot of people who believe in philanthropy or giving back to the poor, a big part of Christianity, right, is like giving to the needy. I know there's a lot of poor people congregate at church, so churches they either know where you could get food if you were hungry, or they literally work with these like soup kitchens. Anyway, and then there's this new idea, well, I don't know how new it is, but at least for me, it was the first time I was hearing about it, of community fridges. So community fridges, they started to like put these up inside of like restaurants, and these are like restaurants that are like deeply connected to the community, and it's sponsored by like a local business that will actually pay the electricity fee for this community fridge. And a lot of people in the neighborhood, you just put any food that you have. Maybe you cook a meal and you have an extra plate, you put it in the community fridge. If you want to donate a loaf of bread, you put it in the community fridge. And then typically, well, sometimes there's like even a person who's hired to just like help out at the community fridge, to like direct people, to help them box things up. And then there's like this other idea of like food banks. So unlike a soup kitchen where you come in and you get like one meal, it's like a hot meal that you eat there, food banks give you like a box of food that you can like take home to your family. Now, a lot of like nonprofits that are working on food access or have some sort of program that is delivering food to the poor, they are doing this concept is being applied where they're giving food boxes to people who are low income. I don't even know if there's some sort of like, form or anything that you have to fill out. I think you can just go and you just show up, right? And they'll just give you a box. And I think they're just keeping track of the number of boxes that they give out. But there's a big problem here, especially in New York, because people are so culturally and ethnically like diverse that the food boxes that they get doesn't include food that they culturally eat. So people will just starve. They're just starving because like the free food box had a bunch of produce, but like they don't eat produce, or it didn't have like halal meat and they are halal, or it didn't have whatever their dietary and ethnic restrictions are. That free food box did not have food that would enable them to continue to live according to their cultural, dietary requirements. And so those people just are starving. There's another phenomenon that's happening where some people just don't even have time. They're like the working poor, so they don't even have time to go to the food bank or the soup kitchen, or maybe in some cases there are people who receive like food stamps, but even the amount of food stamps that they receive is like not enough for them to buy enough food to last for a month. So the food access problem is slightly more complicated than, I don't know, than I was aware of, because I just feel like if I was hungry, I would just make time to go to the food kitchen. I would just find, and some of them are open 24/7. There's probably other components to this, like maybe the 24-hour soup kitchen. I'm just gonna give a New York reference here. The 24-hour soup kitchen is in Brooklyn, but you live in Harlem, and then you are a member of the working poor making like minimum wage. And so even like having enough transit money on your subway pass to get from Brooklyn to Harlem and then back, and then having enough to get like wherever you need to go to get to work, right? Like you literally don't have enough money to make it to the soup kitchen. So pragmatically, you should just starve and then go to work, because at least then you'll keep your job and pay your rent, because it's probably better to be housed and unfed than to be unhoused and unfed, right? Like poverty is tricky. Like this is what I'm assuming. I haven't actually come across anyone who's in that exact position, but I'm thinking hypothetically. I still think that like some parts of this are even more sad, because there's kids who are starving, and kids who are starving during COVID. Like, I mean, maybe there needs to be some sort of like information justice initiative that teaches elementary school kids, especially poor kids, you know, who are under the age of 18, how to access food via a food kitchen. Like literally give them the phone numbers to call, teach them how to call. Like if you are hungry, call this number, we will try to get the food to you, you know, because like those free lunch programs were enabling students to have access to food when they need it, right? And when the schools are shut down, those food programs, at least in Oakland, I think they kept them back up. So they literally made it so that breakfast and lunch, you could just go to your school and pick up the lunch or pick up the breakfast. But still, like, I feel like there has to be other reasons why students aren't able to access that. Like maybe they have other siblings that they're caring for. Maybe their school is like a bus ride away or something, and it's like not worth it to catch the bus to get to the school. Or maybe your parents like lost their job, so now you can't afford a bus pass anymore, whereas you could before. Or maybe like your school was giving you like a transit ticket to get to and from school when school was open, but now that the school is shut down, they're not giving you the transit ticket anymore because there are no in-person classes. There's a whole other, you know, really huge issue that comes up here in terms of access, given that I think there are, in the Bronx in New York, there are 275,000 families that are not connected to the internet. And that's just in the Bronx, New York. That's a lot of families. I didn't even know that there were that many people in the Bronx. Like, New York has a ridiculous number of people. Which is another reason why I feel like if you can solve issues for like the New York poor, you can pretty much solve issues for the nationally for the poor. Because wow, this soup is so good. Yeah. Just imagine not being online during this entire pandemic. I mean, that's nuts. I feel like, at least for me, since the pandemic happened, things have like picked up. There's like more of a need. But it's such a mad time. Like oh, this is actually the most interesting. So a while ago, I was working on the project comprehension, which was working on, K through 5 literacy, trying to build an AI model that would help students learn how to read. Now, I stopped working on that project, honestly, because it felt like it wasn't hitting, like people didn't understand what the real need for that was. Now, ever since that, I started working on that before COVID happened, and I think I killed it like a few months before COVID. I definitely should have. I mean, I still have all the work I did from that project, but I think now more than ever, I've heard parents complain about this. Like, oh my God, my student's not understanding. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Like, you can give, like, all of the material that students are working on in class is freely available online. Like, you could very easily build your own K through 12 curriculum. Like, homeschooling today is actually not, just having a curriculum for a homeschool is not the issue. The issue is having a one-on-one mentor, a teacher, someone who could actually get you to the point of understanding. Because simply having curriculum and student does not equal learning. You need like curriculum, student, instructor, feedback loops, supplemental tools, schedules. There's like so much that you need. And like, I think a lot of people are believing that they have a quality education because their kid is just going from home to school, school to home. They do some homework and everybody's like, winners. And it's like, no. That's like the difference between like poor kids and wealthy kids. Like, wealthy kids are actually getting one-on-one mentorship. They're like having multiple discussions with their peers about the subject matter. They're thinking about the topics when the school is over. Like, studying does not stop when the class ends, really. So anyway, and from that, and from my AmeriCorps year, it became really clear to me, like, there's like a real need for trauma intervention, because a lot of the students in the school have, like, right now at home are experiencing trauma and really like abuse or neglect, really. And there needs to be like solutions implemented in the school to solve for that. And right now there's not. And there's like tons of research. This is what I'm finding out by speaking with people who are like, have their PhDs in education. It's like, there's tons of research about how to mitigate trauma. And the solution there is actually, if a young person has one adult in their life who is like consistent and positive, that young person has hope. The problem there, it becomes a real problem for young people when there's no one. Like, they don't have any adult in their life who's like, giving them something to like hang on to. They're just like surrounded by trauma. That's when those kids, they can't function. The dysfunction, it just continues. But as long as there's just one adult in their life who's like consistent and reliable and trustworthy, that student can flourish. That's the solution. And there's tons of research that like describes this in depth. But for whatever reason, we are not implementing those solutions. Why? Do we not care about poor kids who are experiencing trauma? Like, if you actually want to know the problems in the hood, it's not really like we need a bunch of these like social justice white teachers to come in. That's not what we need. We need like intervention for what the hell's going on at home. It's like, you know, the kids who are going home and they don't have lights or internet. It's the kids who are going home and they don't have food. It's the kids who are going home and they don't have a computer or a desk. It's the kids who are going home and they're getting raped, or their parents are beating them, or their parents are fighting, or maybe they're witnessing domestic abuse from one of their, you know, family members, or they're homeless. You know, those are the issues. It isn't the curriculum, and it isn't like the school. We don't need bigger or better buildings. That's not what's gonna make these like transformations within like the students and learnings and outcomes. It's like the support, the social support for young people. And I think this is also really present in like young adults, and we're seeing it in like social media, where people have all these like friends and followers, but they don't have any meaningful connections. Like, you actually need to have like meaningful connections with people. And I think even throwing out that term is like hard to like fathom what I'm actually even talking about. I'm talking about like having friends that you can call when things go wrong. Like, there's one person who I met recently, and as I was like hanging out with him, like he introduces me to like his best friends, right? And like I was like, he felt comfortable enough to talk to me about these like real like serious social issues, social problems that he was having, but he like didn't talk to his friends about it. And he knew me like not as long as he knew his friends. These were like his friends of like 7 years or something. And I was just so confused. I'm like, these are his best friends, but like you're not talking about any of the real shit that's going on in your life with your friends? Like, what? Those aren't your friends. Those are like your accomplices. Like, but you guys are together every weekend. Like, I am just so confused about how people spend their time. I'd rather talk to a wall or my journal about my real problems if I can't talk to my friends about them. I mean, at least when I wasn't talking about my problems, I just wasn't talking to anybody at all. I just cut myself off from everybody. I wasn't talking to nobody. I was like, yep, I just changed my whole phone number. I'm just a new person now. But I guess maybe that's something that just really needs to be like unpacked and explored and explained. There's this other concept it's come up in a few conversations that I've had, but it also came up in the episode on mental health on the show Grownish. And it's this concept of depersonalization. So basically, like, depersonalization is a form of dissociation where like you feel disconnected from sometimes like your body, your experiences, and you're going through things, but like you don't really feel anything. You just like kind of stop feeling. And I've talked to some people recently who've felt this like sense of depersonalization for years. Now, I feel like personally I'm in a state where I am experiencing depersonalization, but this is kind of a new thing for me. Like, last year I definitely wasn't feeling depersonalization. I was just feeling fucking anger. It was just like anger and extreme sorrow, like whatever severe depression looks like. But depersonalization is different. It's like past the point of pain and sorrow. You're at a point where like you don't feel anything. Like, life is happening, but it's like nothing is happening. It's almost like you're like a zombie. You know, it's like shit is going on. Someone could like sock you and you might just be like, that's kind of where depersonalization is. It's like, sometimes it can be a good thing too. Like, maybe you win a ton of money, you literally feel nothing. Like, you're just past the point of feelings. That's where depersonalization is. And I think it might be surprising to just understand that there's like quite a lot of people who are in a space of real depersonalization. Like, that's a real feeling that's happening for people like now, right? For real. I just think that's something to keep in mind. What else have I got? Oh, well, my birthday's coming up, and I really wanted to go to Africa for my birthday. I don't know if I'm gonna make it to Africa on like the date of my birthday. Also, funny story, I'm braiding my hair, but I am mad slow. So my hair's not even done. As you can see, some of the ends are like all whack. I'm gonna fix this and it's gonna be like kind of one length. The struggle is real, y'all. I've been busy. Just so yeah. That's pretty much what I've got to say. I just wanted to tell you guys about some of the poverty problems that I've been exposed to now that I feel like I kind of wasn't before. And I just wanted to share that because I'm kind of into sharing. And I really want to like make content about the things that I do. So, ugh.